Hey everybody, it's Mark Coons here with Coldwell Banker Horizon Realty. We're going over the monthly stats for May of 2022. So it's already June 1st, and whether the weather outside is agreeing with us or not, we're heading into summer, and we're going to look at the real estate market, what it's done in May. And a lot of it is kind of continuation from what we've seen in the last couple months, with inventory starting to rise and create a little bit more of a balanced market. But we're going to go in and see what these numbers actually look like on video, so you can see for yourself, and so see where the changes are. And we're going to look into a little bit more things than I can get out in my weekly email. If you are subscribed to my weekly email, thank you. But if you haven't already, subscribe below in the link below, and you'll get market information by the week in your inbox there. And we're going to do more and more videos of them like this potentially. So if you do like this, please hit that like button so you let me know, and let the algorithm know that you do want to see more of this. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out what it's like living here in Kelowna and the real estate market here in Kelowna. But what we're going to look at is this market, and we touched on it last week, and this is the new addition that I'm putting in the weekly email. It is the amount of listings. So this is the weekly market snapshot. This is what we call our hot sheet. Looking at it here, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. And what we have there is 262 new listings in this last week. We're going to get into a little bit more into this. We're starting to see some withdrawals, price reductions, that sort of thing. But we've started to see 121 sold. So roughly, it's been kind of sitting around that 50% of the amount of listings are kind of selling. But the numbers that is really changing as of recently is the price changes down. That is the highest we've seen it in a long time here at 136 price reductions. That is not all encompassing of it, because we're going to get into some other information with the withdrawals, and when they are withdrawn, how many days on market are there. So we're going to get into some of that information. But essentially what we're going to be looking at right now is the supply, the demand, and the withdrawals. So just hitting it right off the bat here, it's, we're starting to see a little bit of a change down. We're going to start to see this likely continue today, June 1st. Bank of Canada just announced they're increasing interest rates again, 0.5%. So that is another increase that really kind of triggered this change to a balanced market. So that might further put this into, it's tough to know, but that might further put some of this information down into, more of a balance, or really maybe shift it directly to more and more of a seller's market or a buyer's market. So something that we'll keep a watch on. Anyway, so we're going to get into the stats there. So let's look at the total number of active listings, and let's compare it to the past 5 years. So right now we're just in the monthly stats here, and what we're looking for is in the central Okanagan. So we can divide it out, look at single family homes, stratas, documents. I'm putting all these numbers into the weekly email for the amount of active listings. But why we want to look at this, and just because we are comparing it to the past. So the amount of active listings is, based on the long term, the 5-year average, we are still, relatively low inventory for the time. And if we look at the actual physical numbers, you can see where the numbers are at. So we're at 1,853 new listings. The peak from what we've seen in the last 5 years was 2019 with just under 3,400 listings. So overall, the active number of listings is increasing. As you see, we're up of 300 listings this month compared to last month, and we're up about 600 listings compared to March. So inventory is increasing, and up in about 900 listings since February. So we've about doubled our amount of listings since February. So that's just something that's I think that's good news. Everybody's going to see it. It's creating more of a balanced market and really taking that upward pressure on pricing. And so supply is increasing, as you can see here. We are, all of 2021, we didn't see anywhere close to that amount of listings. It was about sitting around the 1,400 listings for the peak of what we saw in 2020. Obviously, that was a crazy year with lockdowns, shutdowns, everything like that. But what we saw, a peak of in June of just over 3,000 listings that hit the market there. Where we're going to look at next is, so that's the supply aspect of it. Now let's look at the demand aspect. So we're just looking at the total number of sales. Right now for the month, we saw 560 sales, and let's just go look at the chart here, just see how it compares to years prior. So the amount of the sales, so this one, if the higher, the bigger the number there, obviously the more amount of demand there is. So over the last 5 years, we saw little peaks and valleys. Just every market cycle will also have one where you'll always see the peaks and valleys, because that is also a lot of it in this real estate market is monthly driven. January, December, and January are going to have a lot less sales than necessarily what you might have in June and July and that sort of thing. So we are seeing relatively, fairly good demand out there, but it is petering out, especially for this time of year, which is a little bit weird. Where we see in 2020, the demand started to increase there in the summer. Obviously, the lockdowns was a different situation, but if you see in July of 2017, we saw, it's starting to come down there too. So what we're looking at, overall number of values, is 567 sales. So that's roughly on par for what we saw in April, and a little bit down from what we saw in March, from about 100 solds. But a lot of that in March was maybe a little bit, that's when the interest rates started to increase there. So that is where there's maybe a little bit of a rush to get into the real estate market there. And then with February here, it is 589. So we're relatively, you're down a little bit from those days. But if we compare to what we saw last year, so we're about at the same market as where we were in August and September for the amount of demand on the market. Obviously, inventory has increased since then. We just went over the inventory, so there's more options out there. But the demand isn't necessarily falling off, so homes are still selling. But we are starting to see a little bit more of those price reductions, and a little bit of a price cap, I guess I would say, where prices seem to have petered out. If you want to look at the sale price averages, and we're going to compare the last 5 years, this is for the entire market. So this is going to, we're just going to look at the chart here on it. And so this is going to be for how we've seen that price increases over the last 5 years on it. And we can even change this over the last 10 years and look at it from that aspect of it, where we're looking from the last 10 years, you can see how much home prices have increased on average. If we want to get into it a little bit more and see one specific area. So now we're just going to look at the single family one. This is going to include duplexes, half duplexes, fourplexes, that sort of thing. But it overall in the single family market, this is the rate of what we've seen prices increase, the average home prices over the number of years. Right now we're sitting, the average home prices for single family homes is $1,165,000. It's down a little bit from what we saw in February and March, but again, I think that it was initial demand really rushing to get in, people trying to bid and get into the market before rates increased. Maybe they ended up paying more. You buy it at a higher price and you're paying less interest, but you end up paying the same amount of interest what you maybe would be paying if you would have waited. Now you're at the $1,165,000 mark on it. But looking at the average prices, I mean, it's crazy to see how much they've really increased over the last 5 years, and where we're going there. However, looking at it, what we're going to look at right now is the withdrawn. So the price reductions is one thing we're looking at, but what we've seen in the last is people taking their homes off the market. So that's why it's not, you can't just judge everything days on market, everything like that. That's why that number, that stat, it really isn't really applicable, because people can skew those days on market just by triggering certain things. So when we're looking at the overall market, the number of expireds, the number of withdrawns, the number of price reductions, With price reductions, that's one thing. So we saw 136 price reductions in the last month, but what we haven't accompanied for is homes that were taken off the market and relisted at a lower price, which will oftentimes, so it's really just a cue what the queue the days on market so it doesn't show as 30 days on market or whatever the situation is. But when we're looking at these days on market or looking at these withdrawals, we're going to just focus on this DOM, which is the days on market. And as you can see, there's 136 price reductions, but we're starting to see, homes within the 30 days, home on 5 days. There's the minimum listing date we can have with our board is 60 days. So there's no reason why a lot of these ones should be withdrawn or taken off the market. Obviously, circumstances changes and people might change their mind, but oftentimes what we're going to likely see is a lot of these properties be relisted and at a lower price there as they adjust to the market, because this is what we're starting to see a little bit more. So 5 days on market, 15, 7, a lot of these numbers are, well, they're all under about 60 days for the most part. There's a few over, but there's no real reason. So there's a good chance that we're going to start to see a lot of these ones. And these are all properties, and we can go in and look and see which properties are back on the market that are taken off and then pop back on. But what we are seeing is just changes, and so these factors really are going to bring should be also